This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. I really like them better than most people. I'm absolutely positive I was one in an earlier life. They're honest, they're loyal, they're smart. And in fact, they've been some of my best friends. And in fact, my guest today. Joining me today for a special look at man and dog best friends are Thea, Elvis, and Que. These dogs have brought along Alan Gunzburg, Amy Dixon, and Frank Sr. To guide us in this conversation is Michelle Brier, Director of Marketing and Communications at Guiding Eyes for the Blind. Welcome, Canines. Welcome, companions. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I hope we can duplicate our conversation that we've had for the last half hour. Let's do some introduction of both the canines and the hominids, the canids and the hominids, if you will. Let's start with Thea. Alan, can you, all of you, talk about basic stuff, gender, breed, age, how old, how long you've had her?
Thea is a German Shepherd. She comes from the Fidelco Guide Dog School in Bloomfield, Connecticut. She turned 8 years old on April 8th, just a week ago. And we have been together for a little under 6 years. She's a female. I think they neuter all guide dogs. She's my first. And she's the best choice I made for any kind of equipment that I needed once I figured out that I was blind.
Great. And then we have Elvis, who's really sacked out. They are phenomenally good dogs. Amy, talk about Elvis. Again, you know, gender, we can guess by his name, and then he responded. And other vital information.
Well, he's got to live up to his rock star name. So,
hey, come on.
Obviously, he was partying pretty hard last night. Elvis comes from Guiding Eyes for the Blind, which is in Yorktown, New York. And Elvis and I have been together for 3 years as of March, and he turned 5 years old on Valentine's Day. He's a lover, not a fighter. And he's my first dog. I lost most of my sight about 5 years ago, and he's the best thing that's ever happened to me, bar none.
Frank, and we have Que here, another beautiful shepherd. Go ahead.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And thanks to Alan, by the way. He's the one that got me down here. And Que is also from Fidelco, and she's 5 years old. Her birthday was in March. This is my 7th time around.
Wow.
But I love the German Shepherd, and I was the first 16-year-old to get a dog in New York City.
Oh, go ahead.
So, and that's pretty much it. She's just a really beautiful, loves to work, kind of a shepherd in the city, loves to walk. But you take that harness off, she has a personality like a Labrador.
Ooh, playful.
Yeah, very
playful.
Too playful.
Describe your relationship to your dog as best you can. How would you, in a couple of words, describe, Alan, your relationship with Thea?
I tell people that she's my confidant. I can't tell you how many times I find myself telling her things that I can't believe I just said that to a dog.
Or anybody.
Or anybody, right.
Right.
Because it's somebody.
It's somebody there and with you all the time. So you wind up telling them stuff that if they could talk back, they'd get you in a lot of trouble. But I've had dogs before in my life. I've never had a shepherd, and I have come to understand that she is the smartest dog I've ever seen. And I tell people that if she had thumbs, I not only would have a guide, I'd have a driver.
Ooh, that's good. Amy?
Yeah. Well,
Your relationship.
Elvis is so unique to me. you know, I've ridden horses before I could walk, and for more than 35 years, and it's the closest thing I can find to it, like an equine partnership, in that he senses and now anticipates everything for me. And like I said before, he's got the veto power in the relationship, and I've never had that with a horse.
Explain that he's got the veto power.
Well, it's important. You know, it's called intelligent disobedience. They call it at the school, where basically if I tell him to go forward into a busy street and he goes, wait a minute, no, you're wrong. And you have to trust the dog and know that he's going to be right 100% of the time. And that's
Wow.
it's a big responsibility to hand over to an animal. And I wouldn't do that with a horse. Whereas with him, you know, it's such a unique partnership. And he's with you 24/7, and your family's not, your coworkers are not. So the longest he's ever been apart from me was 3 hours while I had surgery.
Wow.
Wow.
In 3 years.
Wow.
And so, and he was in the waiting room, and he came into the recovery room, and so yeah, it's a very unique bond, and he worries if I go to do laundry in the laundry room. He's like, "Where'd you go?" You know, he's in charge of my well-being, and it's nice to have that responsibility taken off my shoulders.
Wow. Frank, you in a video made about you talk about trust and the importance of trust for the visually impaired, the non-sighted, the blind, whatever. Both trust in other people, but really what Amy's talking about and what Alan's talking about is trust in the dog.
For me, that's where the trust starts. I mean, that's how you learn how to trust. Once you put in that time and that commitment, those first 6 months with the dog, forget about it. It's learning how to trust. And that bond is the most unreal feeling. It's like being on a ride. Because you pick up that harness and you start walking the city, especially myself, we'll walk from 125th Street down to South Street. And we'll go through Central Park, we'll go anywhere I want to go.
He lives in the Bronx and takes the express bus to Manhattan.
But anywhere we want to go, she's there. And like, you know, she makes it easy for me to walk into strange places because I'm not afraid. I know she's with me. But the walk is like holding on that harness. Once you get that training down, and you hold on that harness like a ride. It's just like getting on a ride and just hold on. And trust that dog.
So in a sense, you agree with Amy that, in a sense, she's the boss.
She's the boss as long as that harness is on. And the thing is though, unlike Amy here, because I am a vocalist, I do gig a lot. I don't take her. So I had to make sure that I had a dog that would be used to not being with me.
Separation.
Didn't mind staying home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so she will stay home, no problem, watch the house, play. She's the different kind of shepherd because she is a shepherd of a Labrador's mentality, so.
Meaning what? I mean, for the
the
doggies out there.
A shepherd is, you know, got a little edge to them.
Yeah.
This one here has got nothing but play on her.
Oh, so that's why Elvis, you know, they would love.
Yeah.
Okay, let me turn to you, Michelle, for a moment, and sort of as the managing a school for the blind, Guiding Eyes for the Blind, and how did you get into that? How did you become involved in the training of guide dogs?
I have a strange story. Similar to Amy, I have a background with riding horses and training horses. And I had always thought that the horse and rider relationship was the most intimate bond you could share with an animal. When I graduated college, I went to live in New Zealand for a few years, and I took kind of a somewhat random job at the New Zealand Foundation of the Blind. And there I discovered—
And you had no background in this?
No.
And no previous interest?
No, I had actually never met a person who was blind before I started working at the foundation. Yeah.
Wow. Go ahead.
And it was funny, I took a job in fundraising and had no idea how I'd passionately represent, you know, what this organization did. And that quickly changed, particularly when I met guide dog handlers and learned about how they worked with their dogs and just saw how incredible this relationship was. It was something I could relate to and something I was just blown away by.
Great. And you come to Guiding Eyes for the Blind when?
I've been there just over 4 years.
And okay, now, you know, the website says an accredited guide to school whose mission is to provide greater independence, dignity, and new horizons of opportunity. First of all, what's an...
It's a handful right
Yeah.
It is.
And I think it
very
applies to
formal.
all of you. Yeah, very formal. Well, I mean, mission statement. Some academic
Yes.
wrote it up. What does it mean to be an accredited guide dog school? What do you teach?
Well, as
How
far
do
as
you get accredited?
As being accredited, the International Guide Dog Federation is sort of the governing body of guide dog schools around the world. Every 5 years, any school that wants to keep their accreditation or gain accreditation gets tested by an assessor from the Federation to make sure really that you're using best practices as far as training your dogs and teaching your students.
Talk about the size of the institution, how many dogs, how you actually train them, the use of volunteers. Give me a couple of minutes on, you know, the how-tos.
Could talk for about an hour, but I'll try and
No,
keep it
forget
small.
the hour. Professors do the hours. You're not allowed.
Guiding Eyes graduates about 160 guide dog teams each year. Something newer that we're doing, I'll just mention briefly, is we also are now placing autism service dogs with children. So we do between 10 and 12 of those, and that's programs only about 4 years old.
Wow, that's perfect.
Yes, it's pretty
Go ahead.
incredible. We utilize about 1,400 volunteers to help us accomplish our goals.
Now, are these the folks that are walking the dogs in the subways? and on the
Often, yes.
streets?
One of the most important volunteer positions we have is that of our puppy raisers, who take our dogs at 8 weeks old.
Like foster care?
Absolutely.
You can sign up for dog foster care?
can. I've been a puppy
wow.
raiser myself.
I
It's
love this.
a pretty incredible experience. So raisers teach basic obedience, house manners, and perhaps most importantly, they socialize the dogs to pretty much everything the world
How
has
does
to
the
offer.
dog selected?
We actually, Guiding Eyes and the majority of guide dog schools around the world breed their own dogs because the health and temperament to be a guide dog is so specific.
Okay.
So most schools actually work together as part of an international breeding group to help kind of better the guide dog altogether as a breed. So we breed our own dogs. They stay with us for that first 8 weeks. We do some early socialization with both volunteers and staff. They go to their puppy raisers. They come back to us for evaluation at 18 months old. And then some will go to breeding, some may go to autism, but the majority of them will go into formal guide dog training with a professional instructor.
Now, how do you educate Amy and Alan? How do you educate the hominids in this pair?
Well, once the dog is ready to be placed, which is typically when the dog's about 2 years old, then we actually start working with our students. Lots of schools do this differently. Many schools, like Guiding Eyes, primarily uses a residential program where students come to us. They actually live with us for 26 days, eat all their meals with us, hang out with us. They get to know us really, really well. Guiding Eyes also has a home training program, which Fidelco primarily uses, where we bring an instructor and a dog to a student's home and actually work with them in their home environment. That typically lasts anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, and both programs are really successful.
Yeah, interesting. Alan, let me ask you.
Well,
Go ahead.
I had gone through looking at all the guide dog schools in the metropolitan
ahead.
area at the time when Fia came. She's been with me for 6 years, and the only home program available that I had heard of was Fidelco. And I at that time had 2 very small children. And being away for a full month would have been a hardship, as my wife is a return to work person and I'm the stay-at-home person, father. So for me, finding a school that would teach me, bring a dog to me, teach me, open up the instruction booklet and let me see it and figure out how it works, was just the icing on top of the cake that made me say, you know what?
What did
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask Alan and then jump in, Frank. What did you have to learn about Fia and about guide dogs, and specifically because this is your first one, and then I want to turn to Frank, who's had multiple guide dogs, and then Amy.
I would say, one of the things that we talked about early on was trust. And when you have some vision, like I do, when I talk to small kids, and I do a lot of work with small kids, I tell them that my vision is like looking through a straw. So if you put 2 straws up and you look like this, that's what I see.
And within those straws, you can see clearly.
Clearly, but
Like-
I can only see what's in the straws. So the other way to explain it is I tell them, you have a big TV in the living room and you have a little TV in the kitchen. I'm the little TV. The big TV is, your mother, your father, who can see the big picture.
We probably might work on a different metaphor, but that's fine. That's okay.
It works for little kids.
That's
so-
okay.
But-
so
but-
your biggest adjustment was what?
My biggest first adjustment was trust.
Okay.
It's when you see and you have to tell the dog to do its job, and you are anticipating sometimes the dog's next move. That's a very difficult thing to let go of.
And the dog at the same time anticipating your moves, so there's this real interaction.
Well, it's very interesting,
Go ahead,
Alan,
Amy.
Alan, on that point, because
then I'll get to
Alan
you.
and I have very similar vision.
Explain your condition.
I have multifocal choroiditis, which is an inflammation of the membrane that surrounds the retina, and I have azor, which is a type of retinopathy similar to diabetic retinopathy, where I have only central vision. And
Similar to Alan.
Similar to
and
Alan.
you developed this condition in your 20s?
In my 20s.
And you did it when?
I have retinitis pigmentosa, which is a name for a disease which is probably 300 plus different diseases. We don't know what my genetic problem is, but I have been losing my vision since I was born.
But when did you, when was this epiphany that I need something?
I tell the story that when I was before I got married, I was in the dark bars with my friends, and when I started asking him how pretty the girl was down at the end, and we found out that it was a guy, I knew that I was having trouble seeing at night. And that was the first thing, and then you rack your car a couple times when you're driving in the evening, and that was number two, and then I went and, went for a first diagnosis and a second diagnosis and a third one, and they said RP, and that was it.
And you're nodding your head in terms of the interaction?
In terms of, he said you asked him the most difficult thing about adjusting to the dog. For me too, is that trust, especially one of the most interesting things I heard from the instructor that trained me at Guiding Eyes for the Blind, was she said that people who have a little bit of sight are the most difficult people to train, because your instinct is to anticipate. And I see a flower pot in the middle of the sidewalk sometimes, not all the time, but 1 out of 10 times I see it, and my reaction is to pull the dog up or stop the dog. Well, that's his job, not my job. And so it's letting...
You know your responsibility.
You have to let the dog do his job, and it's very hard. Like sometimes sometimes I'll see a car turning, and sometimes I won't. And it's everything against your nature to not anticipate and let the dog do the problem solving for you, and that was really, really hard to let go like that.
Okay, now Frank, you were blind from birth, so your life situation was different, and you've had now what, 7 dogs?
This is my 7th dog.
This is your 7th dog.
Right.
What's the difference between learning with your first dog and learning with the most recent dog, and what's the differences in between?
Well, what I was going to say before.
Go.
What I was going to say before is that I've done both the class. And then I went to Fidelco for the home training. And I always try to tell people in the beginning, if you're going to get a first dog, try to do it in a class situation, because you're with people who have questions that you may not think of. You're then forced to be with the dog to bond 24 hours a day. The class was a beautiful experience, but then I got tired of the class thing. Then Guiding Eyes ran out of shepherds, so I found Fidelco, and that home training is totally different, because now you're coming into an environment that you know, whereas when you do it with the class, you do 26 days up there, and then you're thrown into your own area. Boom, you're starting over with nobody. Whereas when you start with the home training, you're starting with a trainer in an area that you already know. So the dog can relax a little bit, because you have an idea of what time it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about Q? You got her, and what? Talk about the first couple of days. What is it like?
Well, you're coming off the other dog that you were so close to.
Right.
That's the hardest part.
I mean, you're the only one with the transition. What's the interval in between retiring one dog and acquiring another?
Well, this was the longest I'd ever done it. Usually I'd get a dog once I retired a dog or put it down. I would get another dog within 3 to 4 weeks. This one I waited a year, because after the last one I said, you know what, I can't go through this training and bonding again. So I waited a year. Then I said, you know what, Frank, you need a dog, man. Okay. So I waited a year, and I got her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that year, you used the stick, you used the cane.
Right.
Do you two ever use a cane at all?
Not willingly.
You much prefer to have the
Oh
dog.
God, no! It's not a really hot accessory.
Well,
being
first
a
of all-
young woman with a cane.
Okay, yeah, okay.
You know, well, and there's a friend of ours, David Char, who's also a fellow graduate from Guiding Eyes. He said it best when he said, you know, people are afraid to approach you when you have a cane. It's like the do not talk to me. I'm disabled, and it makes people feel really uncomfortable. Whereas a dog, what's cuter than like a shepherd or a lab? People are like, oh, what's your dog's name? Can I say hi? And so all of a sudden you're like magnetic in the room. And for all of us are pretty outgoing and very involved in our communities, and so our dogs are kind of like
Wow, they're facilitators,
they're
yeah.
facilitators because everybody wants to know about the dog and little kids, and it's fun because I mean sometimes it gets a little tiring constantly answering questions
Sure.
on the subway about your dog, but it makes you feel good and you're proud of it rather than wearing it like a badge of dishonor. It's like, hey, I got a really cool
Go ahead.
dog.
But then unfortunately, you have the other side where you hear a lot of women don't want the dog because, well, I don't want that dog here all over my clothes.
Well,
You know, like when I go out, I got to worry about the dog. I don't want to take the dog everywhere I go if I'm going on a date. So, you know, you have the other side too.
Men go on dates. Wait a second.
No, the men go on date, but they don't mind a little dog hair on them. You know?
Oh, okay. Right, we're slobs. You're right. You're right.
Right.
I get the difference between the
So they
two.
want to dress and look clean, you know.
Oh, okay. What is your day like? I mean, let's take yesterday. What was your day like, Frank? And how was your day in a sense different than what your day might have been like sighted, if that's a legitimate question?
Well, as far as that one goes, I really don't know how to answer
Right,
that one because
you had no experience.
I have no experience.
Okay, stupid question.
But I can say that my day, I think it parallels what a sighted person will do. I mean, I go out with my friends. I go to work. I work at down at South Street Seaport at this exhibit called Dialogue in the Dark, which is a unique thing in itself. But it's I go to work.
Well,
I
wait, talk
party
about
with
the
my-
unique thing fast.
Well, this thing is a very fascinating, exciting exhibit, and it integrates blind people and sighted people. It's you take sighted people on a tour of a simulated Manhattan in total darkness, and I am your guide as we go through.
Cool.
And so it's to teach
I like
sighted
it. Did
people
you
about
dig?
blindness.
No, I want
Oh,
to.
we'll
No, you
go.
should come down, really.
We'll come.
Because you teach
Do we have
blind
to
people.
pay? We
sighted-
get it free.
Yeah, I think you got to pay.
Okay.
You teach sighted people about blind, but you also learn about your own senses and trust of your own selves. So, you know, it's a very unique, fascinating thing. I would suggest anyone that works with blind folks to come down, and if you're blind, bring people down. They'll get a whole nother perspective on who you are, and they'll get something about themselves.
Talk about your day.
And that's the day. So like last night, we did our first Dating in the Dark event. But in this case, I left the dog home. I went out early because I'm also a musician, so I had a rehearsal. I had the dog. We walked around. I took her home, got dressed, went down to Dialogue, did my thing down there, came back home last night. She's there waiting for me. Daddy's home, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know,
Amy or Alan, and either one.
Of all three of us, I think my life is most different. Frank has never changed because he's always been Frank
Right.
from day one.
Right.
Amy is my hero because she continues to work. I'm the one that really stopped working in my 40s. Stopped going to work, stopped being, an employed person and going to the job that I had been going to for about 15 years.
But now you have the hardest job on the planet, raising 2 teenage daughters.
Wow.
One teenage
One
daughter
teenage
and
and
one
one
that's
preteen.
scratching at teenagerhood. but my life has changed, and I think that my dog has a very different experience too, because we have 2 pets at home that are dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So she actually lives in a pack of 3, and we also have 2 cats, which is part of their pack too. So it's actually a pack of 5.
Oh my God.
So I get up in the morning and I scoop cat litter and I feed dogs and I get the girls dressed
This
and
is
ready.
productive.
My wife makes them lunch, but it's very different because I would have been shaving and putting on a suit
Yeah.
and making sure that that I check my BlackBerry and that
A little bit of roux there.
So you're enjoying your retirement, that's all.
Right. Oh, the
You
other
know?
way to look at it,
Right.
is enjoying your retirement.
I'll tell you that
He's busy though. You
I
can
don't
volunteer
I
a
don't
lot.
miss my job of what I did. I miss going to work.
yeah.
I miss
Yeah, well, you go to work and so do you.
right. I miss the water cooler.
Yeah.
I miss lunch.
Sure.
I miss. Did you see the Yankee game?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or did you hear the Yankee game?
Right.
Or whatever it might be. That's what I miss. That's
Yeah.
the camaraderie that's gone. And the other part that leaves is it becomes very difficult as a man to redefine yourself when people ask you, what do you do? Because all your life, what you did is
What you
how
work.
you defined yourself.
Right.
And now, what do? Well, I stay at home and watch and it doesn't, I don't know if it translates as easy. So there's been quite an adjustment, but Amy's right. Thea has allowed me to stay in school. I do first grade and third grade once a week.
Come on.
Right.
Right. I'm a member of the board of the Voluntary Services for the Blind of Fairfield County. I'm a member of the Department of Social Services of Greenwich.
Okay.
A
Lions
board
Club.
member. Thea,
And then,
that's
okay,
because
but wait a
I'm a
minute.
dog.
and then Alan, then the thing is too is that sometimes, like he says, you know, I don't know what to tell people because I'm a stay at home. You're almost afraid to tell people that because you're afraid of the connotation that, oh, he's staying at home because he's blind.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I made the comment to you earlier, Frank, that, you know, when I talked about your life,
Right.
you live a normal life.
Right.
It's a normal life.
Right.
Now you are a sommelier.
Yes.
What do such people do?
They drink for a living.
There you go.
Hey,
My kind
right,
can
come
we
on,
switch
let's
places here?
Let's go.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can sit over there. Talk about that and talk about your day.
You told about our drinking?
Yeah. It's like, oh, darn it.
Yeah.
What does a sommelier do?
So essentially, I analyze and taste wines for a living. I sell them. I talk about them. I teach wine classes. I run a couple wine stores up in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Wow.
And I'm opening Connecticut's first all-sustainable and organic wine bar and restaurant.
Actually, Amy, I have you on my website. I just realized.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm known as the Blind Sommelier on Facebook, and I keep busy. I work with the Lions Club. I'm on the wine committee for Near and Far Aid, which is a large granting organization in Fairfield County for need-based charities. I travel a little bit for Guiding Eyes for the Blind. I try to keep my hands in a lot of things.
Wow. Time literally flew. I mean, you really, I just totally lost track. I have no time left. We have to stop. I apologize. I'm enjoying this so much. My thanks to all my guests, canine and human, for being on the show. For more information about Guiding Eyes for the Blind, check out their website at guidingeyes.org. Go to the website for the names and information about special organizations and their programs. Also, join me next week when my guest will be Angelo Falcone, founder of the National Institute for Latino Policy here on CUNY TV. Wonderful, folks. I'm just sorry it was a half hour.
Thank you.
We could have gone on forever. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.